All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this evening's session, a continuation on healing through sharing. And tonight I have with me the beautiful Anna. And I met Anna several years ago when I started my own journey, actually. And Anna is very instrumental in my own journey. And we can talk about a little bit about that later. But let me just tell you a little bit about her before we get into her story. She is the owner and founder of Holistic Journey, and her healing journey actually began almost 30 years ago. And she's going to talk about that this evening with us. And she has an amazing story. She's been through a lot. Anna, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me, Rosetta.
No worries. And so, Anna, you can just maybe start sharing your journey.
My journey started almost 30 years ago. That's when it kind of, I would say, peaked its head, let's say. I'm sure it started well before that because, being an empath, and I really feel that I've been an empath my whole life, it really started to make sense for me once that journey started. My marriage had just ended. I was 28 and a single mother with a 2.5-year-old boy. Bought my first house by myself and was losing a job all at the same time. And it was really tough. It was really tough because I was having a lot of suicidal thoughts at that time. And I think for most people who hit that deep, a lot of people will often say that they didn't even know that you're going through anything because you always walk around with a smile on your face. So, those of us who kind of suffer in silence, really hide it from the rest of the world. And most people weren't aware of what I was going through. And I was always the happy-go-lucky, jolly person. And that's how most people saw me. So to hear that I was that depressed and even having suicidal thoughts, was really foreign when people heard that story. But it was that time when and I vividly remember the scene. I remember exactly what my kitchen looked like. I was on the floor looking at my medicine cabinet, and all I thought was my 2.5-year-old boy was tucked away upstairs in his bed, and I had to do something about it. I had to do something different. And it wasn't just for him. I had to do it for myself. Because we know that if we do things for anyone else, it doesn't always turn out that well, does it?
No.
Right? Regardless if it's your kids.
Yeah.
You have to do it for you. And I felt empty and consumed by fear. But something happened. I think when you hit rock bottom, we always hear the saying that, the only direction you're going is up, right?
Right.
And all I felt was when I knew that I was losing my job and I had bought my house and I wasn't making that much money back then anyway, all I thought was somehow I have to make it work. However that's going to show up, somehow I have to make it work. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about, buying this house. I'm going to start looking for solutions. I'm going to start looking for the options. And what's the worst thing that can happen if things get any worse? You put a for sale sign up again, right? So I went, and, that was such an integral part of my life because not being in a career where I was making a lot of money, really buying that home would have been such a really good option for me. And, it was the biggest turning point for me.
But you had bought the home, right? Before you lost the job? Or
Well, it was happening at the same time. So I knew the house I was going to buy. I was going to put the offer in, and my boss had called me. He had called me aside and said, I'm going to share something with you that's really confidential. Whatever you do, don't go buy that house.
Wow.
And I didn't have anyone, it's not like I had anyone saying, just do it, this is gonna be great.
Mhm.
All I kept hearing was, this isn't good. This isn't,
Right.
how are you gonna do it? You're not even making, like, you don't have a really good salary either.
Yeah.
I didn't really have any support in saying you can do this,
Right.
right? And then when your boss comes and says to you, hey, by the way, I kind of have your back and don't do it.
Right.
And I just, when you just have to trust your gut,
Yes. Yes.
even in the midst of that darkness,
Mm-hmm.
the only thing I had was that gut to trust. And that's all I felt like I had.
Yeah.
So I went for it. And I wasn't one who was courageous. And like I often say, I must have had one hell of a team backing me up, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think once you start working with your intuition, and once you really start to understand that the journey we
Mm-hmm.
have here is a spiritual one,
Mm-hmm.
then you start to see things differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So that was the beginning of me starting to see things differently.
That was
And
your aha moment.
I don't
Or
know
one
if
of
it
them.
was my aha moment as much as it was there is a different path. Right? I didn't
Yes.
know. But the path wasn't clear, You just
Right.
know. And I just knew I had to take it because the one I was on wasn't working for me.
Right.
So how much worse can it get?
Right.
Right? So, but I knew that I had to heal these emotions that I was feeling. And the biggest one that I've learned through Reiki, I
Mm-hmm.
always say, like, Reiki and the chakras have been such an incredible eye opener for me. Reiki's the foundation for me, but the chakra work really got into what was hiding in the corners.
Right.
That's the best way I can say it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so one of the Reiki principles is just for today, do not worry.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole life was consumed by worry, right?
Yeah.
Worry about, am I going to make it? Worry about, what are people going to think?
Mm-hmm.
Worry about who's going to accept this. Worry about, oh my God, who's going to judge me for this? And
Right.
back in the day, to leave a marriage back then wasn't as easily accepted. And not
Mm-hmm.
that it's ever easily accepted,
No.
but it was really, I felt like it was really taboo during that time. I
Yeah.
didn't really, I don't even know if I knew anybody who was walking out of a marriage or
Mm-hmm.
divorced. And it was scary. It was a very scary process
Yeah.
because culturally you were
Like,
going
oh no.
against the rules.
Yeah.
Society, you were going against the rules.
Yeah.
Religiously, you were going against the rules. So everything was going against the rule. I had everything working against me,
Right.
right? So,
And you're letting everybody and everything down.
right, you're letting everybody down, including my son,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously at 2.5, he didn't have much to say, but
Yeah.
you always thought, what are you going to tell him in the future?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it felt like you were letting everybody down, but that was the aha moment. The real person I let down through that whole journey was myself.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really matter
The most
about letting
important
down.
person.
The most important, like,
Yes. Yeah.
we're going at this alone, guys. Like, you have other people, but your journey is a very personal one,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even though we
Yeah.
have friends and we have family, your journey is a personal one. Your
Yeah.
journey is yours. It's nobody else's. Nobody else gets a say,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we
Yeah.
live in such conditioned ways. And I thought, I looked at my son and I thought, I want something different for him.
Mm-hmm.
I want him to really understand, what does free will mean? we hear free will, like everybody talks about it, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if culture talks about it, but society and religion talks about it.
Yeah.
And just as soon as they finish the sentence, they're just as ready to take it away from you,
Exactly. Yeah. Because
right?
no.
So these were all the ha-ha moments I was having. It's like,
Mhm.
hold on a second. So I have free will, but I don't have free will.
Right.
Or I have free will, but it comes with a lot of conditions.
Or according to somebody else.
Right. So
Right.
what free will do I really have?
Yeah.
So it got me to start really looking at everything. I started looking at culture. I started looking at religion. I really started looking deep. And, I've studied so many different things. Like I've studied Reiki, chakra work.
Mhm.
I've studied archetypes. Like I have a huge fascination with the archetypes. And it's
Right.
been something that I've really embodied into my work.
Mhm.
Um, and once you start to understand what archetypes are yours and really understanding from which place you really come from,
Mhm.
I started questioning, so what is my journey here?
Yeah.
Because I don't think I was supposed to be, a replica of everybody else,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it just started, that's where my healing began, and that's where I started, as an empath, we feel so deeply for
Mhm.
others.
Mhm.
And what I started noticing was that I was really picking up their pain, what they were going through, and I lived my life based on trying to not cause them those pains.
Right.
Talking about the people around me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And when I recognized that the only pain I was responsible for was the one I was carrying,
Mhm.
it just changed everything. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things that empaths really have to understand.
Mhm.
You have to know where to leave that. And,
Right.
when you start to recognize how much people are impacting you, it's really about your wounds and it's not about theirs.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So that's kind of where my journey took me.
Mhm.
Um, and I do my best to live my life on my terms and not to allow judgments to take over. But
Yes.
we
Yeah.
always have those weak human
Of
moments.
course. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once you're on your journey, you recognize them when they show up.
Mhm.
You don't stay there.
Right. And so you mentioned rock bottom because and that's a really um that's a really interesting spot, like rock bottom, because everybody has a different rock bottom. And so if I, look at somebody and I think, oh my gosh, they've hit rock bottom, but for them, they haven't hit rock bottom. So how did you know that that was your rock bottom? Because a lot of
Just
people might not even recognize that they've hit rock bottom. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think the suicidal thoughts did it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The suicidal thoughts, the thought of there's no way that I'm going to live the rest of my life in a marriage that doesn't feel right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I can't show up leaving you in a better place, then something's just not right for
Right.
me.
Yeah.
So to be in a relationship where my wounds were really, where I was holding somebody else responsible for my wounds,
Right. Yeah.
isn't fair.
It's not. No.
It's just not fair. And, part of the work I do today is, if my clients come in and they're pointing the finger at somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
my job is to make them really point it inwards.
Exactly. Yes.
Because
Yeah.
somebody else isn't necessarily responsible for how you feel, right?
Yeah.
If everybody took responsibility for how they felt
Mm-hmm.
and for healing those wounds, we wouldn't be holding the rest of the world responsible
Responsible. Yeah. Exactly.
or captive. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people, I think everyone's on a healing journey. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what they don't recognize is that they, when you're wanting your kids to be really good at something, so really it's because you look good at something, and
Right.
maybe it's making you a successful parent.
Right.
Like, the story you tell is, oh no, but I'm doing it for their good.
Hmm.
That's the story.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
But if you're harming, if that doesn't feel good for you, that you're
Mhm.
pushing, regardless if it's your kids, your spouse, whoever it
Mhm. Whoever.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, I think, if you don't feel good, if you're not happy, if you're not
Mhm.
feeling content, like, it's not easy for people to really say, yeah, I'm ready to look inwards.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think people just wake up one day and say,
No.
I'm really to look inward.
No, because sorry, go ahead.
They may wake up one day and say, "Ah, I think I've had enough of this."
Hmm.
Or they may wake up one day and say, I'm really not that happy at my job, but it does pay the bills. But you're
Hmm.
going in one extra day thinking, oh,
Right.
like, what does mean,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like saying, okay, what am I doing?
What,
What
right.
am I doing? Like, why am I doing this?
And
Um,
that's what I call the awakening.
right. Yeah.
When you can start asking yourself those questions,
Hmm.
you're coming out of the matrix.
Yeah, and sometimes it just you just need that self work to feel happier about that job, because maybe you know what, deep down inside, that is your purpose, is to go to that job, but because you're not happy with yourself, you're not happy with anything else around you as well.
Right. And sometimes when you're not happy with yourself, you've made those decisions from that place.
Right. Yeah.
So as you
Because you
start to
had to.
heal, I'm sorry?
Because you felt like you had to. You were pleasing
Right.
somebody else or going with the norm.
Exactly. So once you start on the healing journey, you start to recognize
Hmm.
some of the decisions you made and where those decisions came from.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, I've always been a numbers person, and I've always worked in the corporate world. I was always in
Hmm.
the finance industry. I was a sales auditor. Like,
Yeah.
numbers was my thing.
Hmm.
But my true passion was helping people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so here you are helping people,
And so here
which is amazing.
right. And it's
Yeah.
not work and it's not a job. It's really truly is a passion.
It's a passion and it's
It
service, right? You're
absolutely.
servicing. Yeah.
Well,
And I
because
love
if
what,
you,
yeah, go ahead.
when you've gone through something, like, how would I not want someone else to have this?
Right. Yes.
Like, how can I possibly not want someone else to have this?
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And, having said that, it doesn't mean that I go to, like, parties or events and start wanting to, like, show people a different way, because that's not true. Right.
Right. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that I can only help those who want to be helped.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the saying, you can take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and yeah, yeah, you can't force anybody to do anything. It has to come within, like you said, and they have to want it.
And
Yeah.
everyone's healing's on their own timing. Like, we
Yeah.
can't even say how long that's going to be.
No. And I always say the healing journey is a lifelong journey.
Lifelong.
Just like,
I'm still on the healing journey.
oh, I think we all are,
Yeah,
we are constantly, and we will always be.
always
Um,
be.
yeah, yeah. But I really like what you said about you looked for the solutions. And so, because a lot of the times what we think about grows more and more in our head, right? The more we think of our problems, the more the problems are going to get bigger. But I really like that you said, I looked for the solutions. There has to be
Has to be.
another way. There have to be other ways to get
Yeah.
out of this. And I think, sometimes that's half the battle. Like, that's the hardest thing to really come to grips on, because when you're in that position and that place, you're not thinking, right? It's just the negative is just growing and growing and growing.
Well, for sure, when you're focusing too much on the problem, what comes from
Right.
that? The anxiety starts,
Exactly. Yeah.
and then once that starts to spiral, you eventually get into depression.
Hmm.
So, how can you think clearly from that place?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of tools. So did you start with Reiki right away, or, did you have other tools in your toolbox that kind of helped you along until something else happened, or?
The first thing I started with, like I really started reading a lot of self-help books, and I started with journaling. So one thing took me to the next. I
Right.
just kept
Yeah.
going, right?
Right.
Journaling was big for me. Um, but still, like, every step I took, maybe, you're crawling out of that space. That's the
Hmm.
best way I can describe it, right?
Hmm.
But so Reiki, I kind of just stumbled upon Reiki, and we often say that we don't go looking for Reiki, Reiki finds us, right?
Right.
And
Yes.
that was the biggest piece for me, because Reiki really connects you to the soul. And like we know, we've often been told, or we've heard the saying that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. We're not human beings having spiritual experience. Did I say that right?
No, say it again.
Sorry. So we're spiritual beings having a human
And
experience,
right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're a spiritual being having a human experience, like everything in this world points us to having the human experience. They don't point us to having the spiritual
Right.
experience.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Reiki really connected me to that spiritual side.
Hmm.
Like who am I spiritually, right?
Hmm.
Like not the part of you that you see, but the
Right. Yeah.
part of you that you feel and hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's this saying to you? Because this isn't going to have anything good to say,
No.
right?
Yeah.
This, though, when you
Unless you
connect to
train it to. Yeah. I mean, you have to harness
this is,
that inner voice to say good things.
well, it's more about the inner voice. My journey has been all about the inner voices in here. This one is always going to try to fight this one.
Because that's where your ego is.
Right.
So
So
we have to get rid of that ego.
it's going to be with us. It's always with us, and it's
Mhm.
always going to be on this journey with us. But when
Yeah.
you see it and you understand it, you think, you're not going to get me this time,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's what the healing journey provides,
Hmm.
is understanding when that voice shows up, like
Hmm.
which voice you're going to listen to, because there's always two voices, but the
Right.
spiritual one is
Yeah.
always the quieter one.
Right.
So how do you quiet that one enough to hear this one,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because this one is all the downloads that we've gotten throughout our life,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
This is how we do things.
Yeah.
That's a statement in itself that tells you that in order to be accepted, you have to do it that way.
Right. But
And I
we
think
know that you
that's where
don't.
most people get stuck,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I said, but you don't. We don't have to do anything like anybody else.
Right.
Yeah.
But see, and that's where, when you look at the root chakra, it's all
Hmm.
about the fear that takes over.
Yeah.
Like, so is my family still going to love me then
Hmm.
if I do this?
Right.
Or, you know, how are they going to view me if I do this?
Hmm.
What's it going to mean if I do this?
And you cannot possibly answer those questions because you don't know 100% how anybody is going to react. You might
And
think,
it doesn't matter.
and it doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter. So I, like, even though it was scary for me at the beginning, and I felt like my whole family was going to disown me, and it was
Mhm.
really scary. It felt really real, and it was scary.
Of
It is.
course,
Like
yeah.
the fear is huge. It's
Yeah.
debilitating. Um, and it did happen for a while, but
Mm.
everything came back,
Right.
right? And most people who witnessed my journey, and I'm sure there was a lot of people who were saying things along the way. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the funny piece, and this is why I say that spiritual journey is one that we do alone. Even though there was probably a lot of people talking and a lot of people placing judgment and whatnot, it wasn't until I finally got to the other side
Mm-hmm.
that people were coming up to me and saying, "So how did you get here? How did you do this?" And how,
Right.
like people just started gravitating to wanting to know how,
Mm-hmm.
right? But along the way, it didn't look pretty.
Right. And they were nowhere near you, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah. 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 So journaling was one of the things, then the Reiki, and I guess like you said, the reading, and that's what I find. The more I read, the more I research, other things kind of pop up, and they'll take me onto that path, you know.
Yes.
And so I always say, everything that appears is needed.
For you.
For you, exactly. Yes. So if I stumble
Absolutely.
across an article, then it's meant for me to read because that's what I need at that moment. And then it might take me somewhere else and somewhere else. So our path is never straight, right?
Never.
It goes all over the place. It's all, twists and turns and ups and downs and I think, when you're open, then you just receive, and things just come to you, and it's just incredible.
Rosanna, you said that perfectly. And the key is you have to be open,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because, if you say, show me, but you're going around life with your eyes closed, like,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
hey, doesn't it say in the Bible, seek and you shall find?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, you have to be open to receiving and
Mhm.
don't look at somebody else's journey
Right.
because your guides and your angels and your your guardian angels, whoever, they're looking out for you.
Hmm.
Like, don't look at somebody else's journey. Look at the one that you're meant to be on.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because they are leading you,
Very much
and
so.
you have to just have that faith. And like you said, you didn't know how it was going to happen, but you knew that it was going to happen, and that there was going to be a solution, so you could buy that house and move on.
Yeah, that was my focus. It's like,
Yeah.
what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I put a for
Mhm.
sale sign back on, right?
Exactly.
But when I look back at my journey now, I look back and I think, who was she?
Hmm.
She had to, the state that I was in, I had to have been guided.
Yeah. Yeah.
The state that I was in, I had to have been, but I was open enough to
Right.
want to be guided.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, I love listening to your story. I've heard it before, and every time I do, it just gives me the goosebumps.
Mm.
I feel like, yes, you were guided, but you were also strong and open to be guided, and that's really, really important. And I think if anyone's listening out there who may be in a similar position, or who may feel like there is, it's the end, there's nothing that they can do, um, turn it around, be open,
Yeah.
ask. There's so much help nowadays.
Yeah.
It's I mean, I know you said that you didn't have any support from your family, and you have to be pragmatic, obviously. We can't be left out in the streets.
Mhm.
But being pragmatic also can mean, being open to opportunities. So I always say there's no mistakes. There's always your mistakes are your experience. Like, they add on to your experience. They open doors, they open opportunities, and you just have to
Yeah.
be willing to take them.
They're your greatest lessons for growth.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so again, journaling, Reiki, chakra balancing, people can contact you, they can visit your website, um,
Thank
because
you.
we're here to support one another.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Because there are so many people who are out there who think that they're alone, but you're not alone.
You're not
You're
alone.
not.
There's hope. There's
Yeah,
always hope. If you want it, there's hope.
yeah, yeah. And you might, yes, be estranged from your family, but that doesn't last. It doesn't last forever. And it might be just for that little bit, if it's a cultural thing, or if, if your family members don't agree with you 100% of what you're doing. And but there's always hope. There's always somebody
Yeah.
there who can help.
And stop looking for the approval.
Right. Yes.
Stop looking for everyone else's approval.
Yeah. But that's what we're taught, right? In school, through our families, our friends, our relationships, society. Everybody has to be
Fit in.
accepted and fit in. Yeah.
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 I'm here to tell you it's great to not have to fit in.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can honestly say that. It's so freeing to just
Mhm.
say, yeah,
Yeah.
this is me. This is who I am.
Right.
This is
Exactly.
me and this is who I am. And
Hmm.
you don't have to like me.
No.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm okay with
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
From any level, like from a practitioner level, from, friendship, it doesn't
Hmm.
matter what it is. Because even, I often tell people, even when it is that they're looking for a practitioner, it's
Hmm.
like, look for the one that you are guided to.
Exactly. There has to be that connection.
There is on
Yes.
on this path, there has to be that connection.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think the connection is huge to your growth, to your
Hmm.
healing. um you know
Yeah.
don't look for someone that somebody else necessarily has used, like,
Right. Yeah.
that's one thing, like, I really don't do my work based on referrals, let's say, because I am
Mhm.
very much on the path of the spiritual connection,
Right.
right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if someone can refer a spiritual connection, like,
Yeah.
it's, even like certifying, so many practitioners, it's like there's no competition in this
Hmm.
business. There's just
Hmm.
no competition
Yeah.
because you're guided to the person who's meant to help you.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Anna, thank you so much again for this evening for our chat. It's been great.
Oh, it's been an
Um,
absolute
do you
pleasure.
want to leave the audience with one little tidbit or something like a final note?
I would just say, if you are feeling lost or in a place of pain, or whether it's emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, and I'm sure there's a lot of it out there,
Hmm.
right? I don't think
Yeah.
it's just the odd person who feels it. I think there's actually a lot more people who are feeling out of balance,
Hmm.
um, and who are feeling like they're lost, or maybe that they keep hitting roadblocks.
Hmm.
Is, do the work, do the healing work, because it's going to help you in such profound ways.
Yes.
Like, you're probably sitting there thinking, I wish I had this, or I wish I had that. And I'm not talking about materialistic things. I'm talking about maybe, relationships, or
Hmm.
maybe you're looking at a career that you really want to have, or maybe your friendship circle, you wish maybe that your friends were different. Like,
Right.
don't look at for other things to be different. Really look at for what needs to be different in you,
Hmm.
what needs to change in you, and take that path, take
Hmm.
that healing path, and know that you have a lot more control and a lot more power than you think you do.
Yes. Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
That's so true. We feel powerless, but when we do the work, we find out all that power just comes up, and it's in us all along. It's been in us all along. But yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much.